Rand, I need another episode of Fully Cinematic.
Beginning with Superman Man of Tomorrow, the DC animated universe's Tomorrowverse has been leading to this for nearly 4 years. And no one who's been following along came this far to quit before the end, did they? So join me as I travel to various realities to run down Crisis on Infinite Earths. And oh yeah, there will be spoilers. Picking up where the last movie ended, we start in Gotham City on Earth 2, where the Batman subdues a clowned up Jim Gordon before realizing that he was just a diversion for the Joker. Arriving in a tank, he detonates the explosives he strapped to the commissioner and sends his henchmen, Killer Croc and Solomon Grundy, to finish off the Dark Knight. While Joker's prevented from destroying Gotham's vibrational tower by Robin and Huntress, who can't accept that he's not her dad, dropping a grenade in his vehicle, the rest of this Earth's Cape Crusaders get-along gang, including Damian Wayne, who also thinks this Bruce Wayne is his dad, Terry McGinnis, and Batgirl brawl with the pair of mutants. After rejecting further assistance from his dead counterparts' flunkies, Bats drops the clown, Croc, and Grundy single-handedly and hauls Mr. J off to Arkham for the 1000th time. Cut to one of the randos teleported to the satellite in the previous movie, telling his origin story to a guy who probably doesn't give a fuck, considering the fact that he's strapped to a chair and covered in fresh burn marks. The interrogator in spandex interprets his captive silence as an attempt at psychoanalysis and explains that he was born Charles Halstead in England, where he grew up a strange pirate-loving loner who realized that he was a hyper-empath during adolescence. He also discovered that he could amplify other people's emotions, which he did to his parents, causing them to fight viciously. Meanwhile, in Krypton space, Mar Novu of the Monitor race watches the planet explode, and when he notices a survivor, Kara Zor-El, suffocating in her escape craft, which is blocking his view, his satellite's AI brings it aboard, where she manages to break free of it. Apparently, figuring out the source of their problems, Charles's parents enroll the little weirdo in a Bavarian boarding school, where his classmates bully him. Back on the satellite, the Monitor has dinner with the severely traumatized Kara in order to influence her to finally eat, as an alternative to tossing her out an airlock. At school, Chuck stops a beating by emotionally manipulating a schoolmate into stabbing his main attacker with a pitchfork. When the school somehow gets back to business as usual, he moves on to making his fellow students moon the faculty. Mar Novu explains to Kara that his people have sworn to observe, but refrain from interfering with, universal events. By the time the Nazis come to power in his town, Chaz has gradually taken over the institution by having several students and staff members themselves and syncing the survivors' emotions to match his own. When Kara recognizes her escape ship, she's crushed when its AI gives her the scoop on Krypton's destruction. A few years later, Halstead becomes an actual pirate, finessing his way into the captaincy of a German naval merchant raider, luring Allied ships with fake distress signals before stealing their cargo and sinking them. After he's sunk himself, good for his ass, he has the other survivors jump overboard. Expecting to die soon, Herr Halstead makes one last mental probe, which affects a group of nearby Atlanteans who take him to their king, the Aquaman. Though he puts up a much greater fight than his subjects, King Arthur eventually succumbs as well. After she breaks down in tears aboard the satellite, the Monitor informs his guests that her cousin survived their home planet's destruction as well. This revelation spurs Kara into action and she flies off to find Earth. Elsewhere, the Storm Pirate informs his prisoner that he established an alliance between Atlantis and the Third Reich. Finally waking out of his stupor, the detainee reveals that he's immune to Chuck's hypnosis and casts a spell that disintegrates the hot poker that he's been using as a torture device. Further shocking his discombobulated captor, he magically imbues him with the ability to travel the multiverse for use in his unspecified role in future events, just before breaking his bonds and revealing himself to be Sorcerer Supreme Dr. Fate. This scares the shit out of Jack Sparrow, causing him to haul ass to the door and call out to the guard like a Mar and his AI watch Kara battle and defeat Brainiac in the distant future, despite the situation seeming hopeless. When she flies to the Kent family farm in the 21st century, Satellite apologetically beams her back to the Monitor's ship. She angrily lashes out at the alien, but completely fails to penetrate his personal shield with her laser eyes. Inspired by his young protege's determination, the Monitor decides to break its oath and attempts to help prevent an antimatter wave from destroying all realities. As a first and dangerous step, he transfers a portion of his life force energy to his adopted daughter. Meanwhile, the Flash searches a war-torn central city for Charlie, arriving just after he teleports away. Long John Silver finds himself in the Oval Office, I don't fucking know, in an alternate reality with angry rioters just outside the gates. He's interrupted by a blue-skinned, flame-haired harbinger of global destruction, who appears to recruit him to a team of heroes picked to combine forces against the wave. But what really convinces him to tag along is a Molotov cocktail flying through the window. Above another Earth, the Superman spots the impending wave and alerts the assembled metahumans aboard the satellite. Mr. Terrific, these fucking names, orders the activation of all vibrational towers as Diana pleads with Kal-El to fall back to safety. When Earth 17 Superman calls for backup because of an overheating tower, the Monitor sends a preoccupied Kara to help cool it down and the planet is saved. However, the full impact of what she's already lost leaves her despondent and a little angry at her adopted father for letting it happen. After being sent to post-apocalyptic Earth, Kamandi is dejected to be the planet's only human survivor again. But after an initial confrontation, he reluctantly agrees to work with Caesar, Solivar of Gorilla City. Aboard the satellite, Chuck complains that his abilities aren't strong enough to radiate calm throughout the multiverse and asks Monitor for a power boost, which is granted. Afterwards, when the Blue Beetle recognizes him from his reality, Chucky explains that he concocts a different stupid code name for himself each time he visits a new world. And Beetle's threat to expose him to the rest of the team naturally gets him hypnotized. Immediately afterwards, Halstead is painfully teleported inside a mysterious, unseen entity who asks why he agreed to help the Monitor. When it shows disdain for the former, Charles names it the Anti-Monitor and switches sides for the promise of his own universe. On Earth 2, the Batman is attacked by shadow monsters, while John Stewart, Supes, Green Arrow, Vixen, and others face a horde of the critters. Diana beams to Earth 46 to help the Amazons fight off their own gremlins, discovering that they're impervious to physical attacks. And Batman's fan club, along with Lucas Fox, show up to fight with him. Bats notifies the Monitor that the beasties can be harmed by intense light, and coincidentally, Kamandi and Solivar happen to have light guns, which they use against a swarm of the things. Unfortunately for Gorilla Zoe, 4 hands aren't enough to hold things off without a casualty. Batman's info prompts Dr. Light to get off the sidelines and onto the field with GL and the others. Not having any laser guns, Diana uses her lasso's Light of Truth against her shadow herd. When the survivors run off, Hippolyta shows up with the Amazons and makes a slick crack about Wonderbra being the sole survivor of an Amazon war, which is some funny shit coming from somebody who showed up just in time to see an army of monsters haul ass. She reveals that she had all of the planet's men imprisoned.
That's bullshit.
And banished their technology, like electricity, but they do happen to have an arsenal of lightsabers. Back on the satellite, Kara meets Charles, and her offhanded comment about his costume inspires his new stage name, Psycho Pirate. As a thanks, he gives her a hypnotic suggestion before broadcasting hate and discord throughout the multiverse. Planetside, John, Kal-El, and Dr. Hoshi light up a flock of shadows just as a distracted Kara beams down and goes berserk on the creatures. After flying into the crowd, she wakes up to her mom walking into her old room on Krypton. After Brainiac 5 and Dawnstar, 2 dead heroes from the 31st century, walk in, she appears on the satellite with Psycho Pirate shadily suggesting that the Monitor destroyed Krypton himself. She runs off crying until P-Double and the Anti-Monitor gas her up to believe that only she can save the universe and everyone in it. After running their shadow mob off, the Wayne family fights among themselves. On Themyscira, Diana pleads with Hippolyta's sexist ass to release the menfolk because they desperately need the backup, seeing as the handful of Jedi weapons and torches aren't getting the job done. Elsewhere, MC Light's rude ass turns on John who manages to knock her out with the construct conjured by his Green Lantern ring. The hobo who harassed the Flash in the previous movie shows up out of nowhere and they have a magic off until the wave arrives. On the satellite, the Monitor confronts Psycho P about his treachery. Hippolyta's stubbornness and misandry prove fatal as she and every other Amazon but the immortal Die are wiped out. Damien and Huntress engage in some physical sibling rivalry, which only ends when the kids see Bruce being overwhelmed. The Spectre chastises the Monitor for his life of apathy and convinces him to atone when the time comes. When GL tells the Vagabond his name, the similarity triggers the memory of his own. John Constantine. Against the sorcerer's advice, the other John overloads his lantern, which demolishes the shadows when it's tossed into the crowd and explodes. Bruce telemats up to the satellite as John wakes Light up in time for her to witness their shadow horde Voltron into a single body. Up top, the Spectre helps the Monitor understand that he could have prevented the current crisis. When Wonder Girl arrives to confront him on similar grounds, he decides to sacrifice himself, deactivating his personal shield and taking her laser attack head-on. Superman and the others' assault on the Shadow Giant results in it pulling a Doomsday/Sentinel, adapting and forming a protective armored shell. Super Chick then tearfully cradles the dying Mar while the Shadow Mongol readies for a final onslaught. A more compelling watch than its predecessor, the Crisis 2 criticism of Batman's habit of fighting hardened killers alongside kids is stellar. But the most touching part of the story is the relationship that develops between the Monitor and Kara. It's also nice to finally see aspects of earlier Tomorrowverse installments referenced, like Jon Stewart's growth as a Lantern since Beware My Power, and Kara's continued isolation since the Legion of Superheroes. And let's not forget the organic explanation for Psycho Pirate getting such a stupid-ass name. But if you really want to see a movie about vigilantes and superhumans bickering amongst themselves before eventually putting up a united front against an existential universal threat, skip this and watch Infinity War instead. In other news, it's time to go through a few comments from another video. After watching my early review of Megan, a neck-bearded incel calling himself Vinny Vitty Vici 6738, who fantasizes that he's some kind of Roman centurion, placed his dick beaters on his keyboard to say, "Nothing is for everyone, kind of like this dead-ass channel. 2 likes." And yet, not only did you watch a year-old video on this channel, but you also took time out of your auto-observation schedule to comment twice. And that's pretty interesting commentary for someone with 15 whole subscribers. The same review prompted the Expert 843 to add, "Finally got a chance to watch this and I thought it was okay. I had very low expectations to begin with because the whole killer doll thing always has me thinking, why don't they just punt this thing across the room? But a 4-foot-tall robot does pose a more realistic threat." Now don't be mistaken, there were a lot of unrealistic moments in this movie. If you're bored and just want something to watch, you can consider this one.
What are you?
I'm Megan.
Displaying a staggering lack of self-awareness, Vinny Vitty Vici chimed in again. "You just wrote an essay for a video with 2 likes. Pathetic." I'm guessing you were looking into your Jizz and Cheeto dust-coated mirror when you typed the word pathetic, Commodus. And judging by the 7 whole views on your year-old video, nobody wants to watch your lonely ass play video games, you bitch-ass nigga. Shout out to the Expert 843 for dropping comments. And shout out to everybody who hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. But I've had enough of this conversation, so I'm logging the fuck off.
Fully cinematic.